Well, hello and welcome to whatever this is going to be called. At this moment, we have yet to still name the show anything. So, what we're still doing, we're going through our list of 20 questions that was compiled by me and given to me by a few people that go to church here, some people that went to church here, and some people that I went to college with, and some people that I'm friends with here that don't really go to church anywhere. So, there's a wide view of people that gave us questions, which I think is why the questions kind of slip in and out of the theological area. That's probably why we're having trouble naming it, is because there's kind of like a mix of different topics that happen. We have Pass with us today. He's our guest star for this episode. Been a joy to be able to talk to him. We've actually asked him some questions about some things that we could talk about later or not on this show anyway. But to go ahead and get us started, we'll go ahead and jump into my prerequisite question, which is not on the list. So I was asked this by a member of our congregation on Wednesday about you, which I have not known you long enough to know the answer to this question.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and ask you this now. When you were like a kid, okay, so your name is, we call you Pass, but your first name is Pasquale,
Yeah,
right?
Pasquale.
Pasquale, which is Italian, right?
Right.
Okay. So I was asked by a member of our congregation, was that something that was hard for you to learn how to pronounce and spell as a child?
No, not at all.
You think you just picked up on that?
Yeah, it's kind of like one of those things whenever you tell a dog their name, they learn it pretty quick.
Yeah, okay. All right, okay.
Hey, if a dog can do it, Pasquale can do
That's
it.
right. That's right. We there was that, and then I had already kind of talked to you about this before, but I was wondering, you had said that it was a relative that you were named for, but you do know that the Chuck-eCheese drummer's
Yes.
name is Pasquale.
Yes,
Really?
and that there's a restaurant in Beckley named Pasquale.
Is there really?
Yes.
Okay, well, I guess it's a more common name than I thought. But all right, now that we've gotten the prerequisites out of the way,
Very
a little
good.
bit of an introduction for us, we have our seventh question, which is, when you are doing right and helping in the ministry, why does it still seem like you aren't doing enough?
That's a good question. I think that is something probably every believer and church member experiences. Wouldn't you guys say that? I mean, I would
Yeah.
say, how about you personally? Like, is that something that y'all feel
Yeah.
personally? Is that something that you have experienced too in your Christian walk?
Yeah, I mean, whenever I first announced that I was called to preach, I had members of my own family that were like, "Why are you doing this? Why are you wanting to preach?" I'm like, "Well, I'm not wanting to preach." There was
Yeah.
several nights that I couldn't sleep because the thought of preaching just kept going through my head, that I couldn't sleep. I felt sick because I was trying to deny that's what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And family members would look up and say, "Well, there's no money in preaching." And it's like, "Well, I'm not here for the money."
Yeah. That's for sure, yeah.
But there's a lot of times that, like directly bearing onto the question, was that while doing work for Christ, there's a lot of times that you don't get feedback.
Yeah.
You don't see results from what you're doing. And they might not have results for 6 months, maybe even a year. Because someone that came to your church that one night that you were preaching left, and they don't come back until the next year. Say it's an Easter Sunday, and then they come back next Easter. Well, you planted the seed last year. You haven't seen that person for an entire year. They come back the following year. You greet them, you love on them, and then that same day they're saved.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because you did that good work in the first place that first year, that the following year, that whenever they heard another message, the Lord overbore on them, and then they were saved.
Yeah. I think one thing that's key in this particular discussion is the Bible says that the increase comes from the Lord when it comes to ministry. The Lord said that He would build His church. And that's so difficult because in every other area of life, at least in my own life, me pushing things and me trying things and me doing things on my own really got a lot of it done. But when it comes to ministry, you can do as good as you can or go as hard as you can or try to do things the best way that you can, and you may or may not get a good response out of that. Not because you're not trying your best or you're not doing your best for the Lord, but that God, in His wisdom, has decided to not really show you the fruit or give you the fruit in the same way that you would see in a secular job, because it's really up to you more,
Yeah.
I guess, in that way.
Yeah. There's two parts to the question that I was just thinking about, when you're doing right. And I guess maybe I don't know what the motive of the question is. I'm assuming that means living right, trying to live holy, trying to live righteous.
It could also just be doing whatever God's called you to do.
Yeah.
Because, some people are called just to cut the grass of the church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that if a person is trying to do right, trying to live right in their relationships, trying to live right in their private life, trying to live right in their thinking, trying to live what we would say is a holy, righteous, sanctified life as a believer. If that person never feels like they're good enough, I would say that they don't properly understand the gospel. It's not by our doing right that God accepts us. The scripture says that we're made acceptable in the beloved, which is Jesus Christ. There's a mentality out there that I'm never good enough. I never can do enough for God to accept me. It makes me think of this verse in Matthew 11:28. He says, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." We should be people that work and serve Jesus from a place of rest, not a place of heavy laden and burdened. So if I'm trying to live right for God in my personal character and morality, but I never feel like I'm good enough, that is going to possibly carry over into my work for God. Well, maybe I'm serving at the church, and maybe I'm working in the church to make up for where I fall short in my character, or I fall short in my thought life, or I fall short in an area of practical righteousness. And if that's the motive, if the motive is I'm doing this so God will accept me, or I'm doing this to be a better Christian, or I'm doing this because of yada, 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 it's never going to feel like enough. It's never going to be enough. We all have fallen short of God's glory, and we all still fall short of His glory in a practical sense. None of us sitting right here in this room could stand up and say, I pray enough. I mean, really, think about it.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would. And if somebody did say, I pray enough, they would stink of pride.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't think any of us would say, I witness enough.
No, because there's
I'd
always
say that
more
for
people
sure.
to witness to.
There's always more.
Because the call is to go into all creation and preach the gospel to every part of creation.
That's exactly right. So I think there could be a couple things maybe at play here if you're a person that, and I struggle with this too. I struggle with, I'm not doing enough. There's more to do. So there could be a couple things at play here. One, it could be that we're not established in the gospel, that we've not found our worth and value and acceptance in the finished work of Jesus Christ. That could be one reason.
Yeah.
My value to God is not based upon my usefulness.
Yeah, that's true. That's a beautiful thing about Jesus Christ, is that not only with salvation is that something that's based off His work, but the entire Christian life and our worth as Christians are based off of Christ's work.
Yes.
And who He is, not who we are. I have the list of questions here in front of me, and I think really I know who asked this question, but I think the key part of this, when you are doing right and helping in the ministry, why does it still seem like you aren't doing enough? And I think it's more along this line. Why does it still feel like you aren't doing enough?
Yeah.
So I think that really the question, at least how I would interpret it, is more along the lines of, whenever you're doing everything that you can and you know that you're doing right, not in the way of trying to do things to better your relationship with God in some way, but rather saying, why does it still feel like I'm not doing enough? Because you kind of said that, you said, I'm doing everything that I can, but I still feel like I'm not doing enough, or I feel like what I'm doing doesn't matter, or I feel like what I'm doing isn't doing as much as it should with the amount of work that I'm putting in, or something like that.
And I think for me, the work's never done.
Yeah.
And you alluded to this earlier, if I'm a carpenter, I go to work, I labor that day. At the end of the day, when I lay my head down on the pillow, I see what I accomplished that day.
But you also see what else is left to be accomplished.
And then I see very clearly what else is to be left to accomplish, and I can rest in that. In the ministry, it's a work of the soul. There's many days that I lay my head down at night and say, I have accomplished nothing today. There's nothing measurable.
Right.
I've not accomplished anything.
Nothing's visible.
Nothing's visible, and you mentioned that there may be no visible results, and not only may there not be any visible results, it may visibly look like things are going the opposite way of what we are working towards, especially working in a church. And then I go to bed at night thinking, well, if I don't see what's been accomplished today, how do I know what's left to be accomplished? So it's not measurable. And I think it comes down to our definition of success. I believe that success defined by the world is different than success defined by God. I think that it's a false assurance to say, well, I led 10 people to Jesus today. I've accomplished something. Well, yes, there's something that's been accomplished, but does that mean you've been successful? What about the man that labors and no souls have been saved today? Does that mean he's not accomplished something? So, when you have one saying, I've been used by God today, I led 10 people to Christ. Well, that can be translated, well, if you did not lead 10 people to Christ, you've not been successful today.
Right, and also being the person that did lead 10 people to Christ, the next day, if you led no one, you feel like you've not accomplished anything.
Yeah.
Because you've already been successful the day before in your eyes. Well, you feel like you need to improve upon that because you think you should always be improving.
Yeah.
The way I like to think about it is kind of like an artist who paints a beautiful masterpiece. Well, to those outside, they see it and they glorify it. They view it beautifully. But the person that made it sees where they feel like they messed up.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's how God looks at everything that we do. He looks down and he sees, wow, you're working hard. Wow, you're trying to better my kingdom. I'm using you. This is great.
Yeah.
But you, as the person laboring to do these things, are seeing flaws, seeing what you could have done more, or what you believe you could have done more. But God's grace has already worked through that, and it bettered, but you just don't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that serving the Lord is not like a secular job in the sense that you don't really have quotas, like we don't have a certain thing in the Bible where it's like, hey, well, if you don't lead this amount of souls, or if you don't invite this many people to church, if you don't do this a certain amount of times,
if you don't witness to this many people per day.
Yeah.
It's not a numbers thing, and that is hard for people, I think, like me, and it sounds, like maybe you're that same way, but I think you in particular, and your son Ben is for sure, that we're kind of the people that whenever we lay down, we don't go to sleep. We think, let me rethink the whole day, and let me rethink everything I've done, all these decisions that I've made, and have I done enough, and was this okay, was this all right? And I'm not saying that self-examination is wrong, but when it gets to the point to where that self-examination begins to cripple your walk with the Lord or cripple how you feel about your walk with the Lord.
Yeah.
It takes away
That's
that
when it
peace
becomes a
that you
problem.
had.
Yeah, I think that's true too. That when it begins to interfere with our rest in the Lord, then we're not seeing it correctly. And particularly as being a pastor, I feel all these unspoken expectations.
Yeah.
And I want to produce something so the people that I shepherd will think I'm being productive.
Right.
And that creates a restlessness in the soul of
Yeah,
man.
it does.
It creates a
does.
restlessness.
Yeah.
Because here's the jokes, right? Pastors just work 2 days a week.
Right.
When they don't see the pastor doing this, going there, doing this, they think, well, what's he doing?
Right.
So it's a unique position. If I'm a police officer, I wrote 10 tickets today.
Yeah.
I don't go around saying, well, today, I prayed for 3 people, and today I was burdened for this family, and today I read the scripture and studied this. It's not something that's really tangible. And it's interesting. We had a brother in the Lord come on staff here, and he said this statement. He said, when I had a secular job, I never had trouble waking up early for my devotion time. But when I came on staff at the church, I'm so exhausted.
It's a different
and I
world.
don't know why.
Right.
When you are working in the ministry, you are on the front lines of this spiritual battle. And there is all the forces of hell coming against that person serving in the ministry. Not just a pastor, not just a preacher. Any work of the ministry, if you're serving in the ministry in any capacity, Satan is a discourager, he's a liar, he's a deceiver. And I believe many times we give him real estate in our mind, and he says, you're not doing enough. Do more.
Yeah.
And that is a rat wheel, right? That's a hamster wheel. You can,
It just snowballs.
It snowballs.
It continues to get bigger. Yeah.
I believe more can be accomplished in 5 minutes of spirit-filled prayer than 5 hours of fleshly labor.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But fleshly labor is praised
Right.
by the church, by other Christians. But prayer, you're just wasting time. I remember reading the biography of Praying Hyde, John Hyde. He went to the mission field in India. And the first months there, back in the day, when you go to the mission field, you learn the language, you learn the culture. And all the fellow missionaries that journeyed with him on a ship to India, they would wake up in the morning and they would eat their breakfast and they would go to language training all day, study the language. Well, John Hyde never went. And he would simply kneel by his bed and pray most of the day. And they said he's a lazy missionary. My goodness. When prayer is considered laziness, when prayer is considered non-productive and not successful, we've missed really what the ministry really starts from.
Yeah.
Before Jesus sent out the 12 disciples, he said this. He said, look on the fields. They're wide unto harvest, but the laborers are few. What did he say? Pray ye, therefore, to the Lord of the harvest, that he would send forth laborers into his harvest. He didn't say, hey, the laborers are few. Go ye.
Right.
He said, pray ye. Prayer is prerequisite for any successful ministry.
Yeah.
But it seems sometimes unproductive when you're the one praying or when you're the one watching someone pray.
Yeah.
So if you're out there and you're working for the Lord, right now, if you're working for the Lord and you feel like you're not doing enough, I think we should take that to God in prayer and say, God, am I being lazy? Am I being apathetic? If I am, examine my life, make course correction. But at the same time, I don't think we should take condemnation for that. We can work ourselves to death and not accomplish anything.
Yeah, that's true.